Okay, and we are here. So hello everyone, happy Martin Luther King Day. My name is Jamal Barnes, and we are here to on day number, what is day number 3 or part 3 of Windows Server 2019 and course. So I'm going to start off with what happened yesterday. We had some issues on the DHCP side. I have since fixed those issues. The issue that I was having was that I was unable to ping the DHCP server. And what ended up happening was that it was actually relating to a firewall issue in which I had to enable file and print sharing, which you'll see right here. In fact, I will show you what I mean by what I had to do. So what I had to do was, I'm going to create this run box and then type in MMC and then click OK. And what I ended up having to do was I had to do a add and remove snap-in. And then I went over here to Windows Defender Advanced Security and then tap on another computer and then type in the name of the server that I was trying to issue. Now you could have did this way. I'll show you the settings. This is what I'm doing. I'm showing you guys the settings of what I had to do. So we click OK, and over here where it says inbound rules, and of course I was getting this error message. So I started off here, and we'll say there was an issue with the snapping. So I figured out a little workaround. The workaround was, first I joined the machine to the domain. And then, once I joined it to the domain, I just so happened to join my regular computer that I normally use. I also joined that to the domain. And then, the same way I showed you guys yesterday, you join from PowerShell with the add-computer command. Then, I went over here from my machine, because I'm using RSAT of Group Policy Management. I went over here, and then I literally just went and created a GPO called Windows Firewall right here. And I right clicked and I hit edit, and then this box will show up. So then I literally just went over here to under computer configuration, clicked on policies, and then Windows settings, and then security settings, and then over here where it says Windows Defender, let me just expand this a little bit so you guys can see. I literally just went over here to this firewall over here, and I set up a couple of rules. So I unlocked just the parts of the file and print sharing error requests. So I unlocked these rules and I enabled those, and I did the same thing for what was going outbound, well, outbound and inbound. And then I linked it. Once I finished over here, I closed out of here, I linked it to this GPO, and then afterwards I went over here to PowerShell. You can do this also from command line if you wish, but I just literally just did GP update. If I can just make this a little bit bigger. So go up to properties, go up to 20, and I just type in GP update // and that was after I set up that GPO. And then you'll get these messages. It says computer policy update completed successfully. Telling me user policy update has completed successfully. Once I did that, I also had to. The other issue that I wanted to bring up next is, after I set all that up, then I was able to do this last night. I was able to I just closed out of PowerShell. Let me bring it back. So I just did this, and then I just did ping the address for the DHCP server, and there she goes. Now, you're probably wondering, why was I able to ping the other domain controllers? Well, here's the deal. When you promote a server to a domain controller, what happens is, once you promote it, it automatically unlocks that firewall rule to where you can ping that address. Without doing it from the firewall level, I mean, you can do it machine to machine, but it's a lot of work in a large scale environment. So what I highly recommend for folks is that if you're going to manage Windows Firewall, just do it from group policy, as I explained here. And we'll talk more about this later on as we get through this course. So, also, I wanted to show you more about what the DHCP server looks like in the GUI. Now that my machine is joined to the domain, I can show you this. So, right here, I have it pinned to the taskbar. I have something called DHCP. I left click. You'll see this box show up. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. And then what I ended up doing was I added a server. Right click, hit add server. And it'll say, you'll give it these options. It'll say this authorized server. If you haven't already, you will have to authorize your DHCP server in Active Directory first. And not only that, but you also have to activate the scope as well. And as you can see here, I did all this through PowerShell last night. And so I went over here and verified. As you can see, server options. You see the router I set to my default gateway. DNS servers I set to the domain controller. This is the scope I created. These are all the devices that have been leased out currently. And then what I'm doing is this area. This is where you, if you wanted to reserve an IP address, like let's say you had a printer or something like that. It's kind of similar to setting up a static IP, but it just gives you some extra functionality regarding DHCP, in my humble opinion. And then over here, you see scope options right here. And I've set up all of those policies. This is like if you have, let's say you have certain devices that come in, they only come in temporarily for a class or whatnot. And what happens is they bring in their device or whatever. They leave after 10 or 15 days, and then you can revoke those devices. And then of course you can also set up a DHCP scope for IPv6 right over here, which I didn't really, don't really need to in this case, but in a large scale environment, you're more than welcome to set up IPv6 as far as automatically generating IP addresses to all your clients. Alright, so we'll close out of that. Also, we show you just a synopsis of DNS. And you'll see this right here. This comes when you set up your Active Directory. You'll immediately get the DNS manager. It's not something that you have to set up separately. What else did I want to mention about? Oh, these zones. So I set up this zone yesterday as well. You certainly can. Go through and you can create I created the zone yesterday. These are all the machines that have generated a DNS record once they were joined to the domain. They automatically generate what's called an A record, and yes, there is a difference between an A record and a quad A record, which basically a quad A record is just is basically just a record where you're going from a host name, which resolves to a host name to an IP address in IPv6. A regular A record like this, it just resolves from a host name to a IP version 4 address. Okay, so this stuff is very, very important. We'll go into this a little bit more later in a separate course. For right now, I want to show you guys a few other different things. Like, let's show you what we did with the other two machines. I went into this all last night And you can see this is our test machine. Okay. And what we're going to do, I've already joined both of these to the domain. But you'll see this is what it looks like once you have it joined. Right here, these are 2 testers. I've got 3 machines that are on the domain, including my regular machine. Yes, if you're on Hyper-V, yes, you can join your host to the domain as well. I've done that with mine many times, and it certainly helps. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to, on this one, because this is just a tester, we're going to go ahead and I am going to go ahead and remove those 2 applications that we installed yesterday on here, because we were just doing this for testing purposes. The reason I'm uninstalling these from this machine is because on my regular machine, I have all of these tools already installed, and I can manage this through my Windows 10 box. I do not need to be on the server to manage those said roles. So I'll install those, and I'm going to just close out of here. Alright. Now, what we're going to do now is also set this thing up. This is called our SQL Server. Basically, this is, you might thinking, oh, it was a graphical user interface. It's absolutely not. And actually, I had went through and installed this last night. If I can bring that over here. This is our SQL Server right here. I ran this on core. Reason being, of course, for security reasons. This is the command up top here that you see here. This is the command you run if you want to install SQL Server on a core server. Yes, SQL Server does support core. This is all you need to run, and when you run this, this will say, please wait while Microsoft is doing this, and then you just basically follow the prompts. There are only a few roles in here to support, so you have to kind of be careful. So let's click next, and it'll give you this warning, which is perfectly fine. Perform a new installation, which is fine. And you'll say evaluation. Of course, because I'm using an evaluation copy, which is perfectly fine. Let me just maximize this. And then you click next. And then you click on this I accept terms and conditions. And then these are the roles that is supported. So, database engine, that is supported. Analyze services, that is supported. SDK, that is supported. Scale out master and client tools connectivity, those are supported. The rest of these options, you do have to have a graphical user interface to run these. It's unfortunate, but that's just how it goes. But core does support certain things, but I haven't just enough to where I can manage it through RSAT. Now I'm going to click next. And basically, of course, it's going to ask you to select a feature. So we'll click next, and it'll come up with this please wait box. A little small box, but a box nonetheless. Then you have to name your instance. I kept the defaults for this, but you could certainly change this. And then the rest of it is just changing a couple options. Honestly, you could just leave it as defaults. And then when you get to the ready to install screen, that verifies that everything is there. Takes about 20 minutes to install, I'd say. No more than that, as far as it should take. But I'm going to click cancel because I've already installed the SQL Server. The reason that I have SQL Server is because there's certain things that do require SQL Server. Things like SCCM, for instance. But SCCM also requires some other different things, which we're going to get into today. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to close out of this, and I'm going to bring up, we're going to set up today, we're going to start off with Windows Server Update Services. Okay? This will be our little lab here. We got 2 servers that we're setting up. I'm setting up WSUS, but I'm setting it through server core. This one's going to be core, and it's just the same, similar prompts. The reason I set this at 300 gigs is because WSUS does eat up a lot of data. No kidding. It just depends on how much are you willing to, how can I put this? It depends on how many updates are you willing to do. And if you don't monitor it and you don't maintain your WSUS server, it will eat you up alive. Meaning that it will eat up almost all the space that's there. So I've given this server about 300 gigs. Basically what this does is it allows you to manage and manipulate and regulate Windows updates to your client machines. So right now we're just getting that installed. Meanwhile, while that's going, I'm going to bring up our other server we're dealing with today, called SCCM. So I can name this BRNSCM01, SSRV. That's going to be the name of this server. Okay, so I'll set up this local admin password, and then we will get started. Okay. Now, me personally, I like to have separate servers for everything. I do not like having everything all on one server, and especially for security reasons. I just do not like doing that. So we're just going ahead and log on. And what will happen is, just give it a few seconds. So we'll click no here. This is just how you would set all this up. And believe it or not, we're going to be whipping up another server. It's going to be called the WDS Windows Deployment Services and Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, which I'll explain in just a second what that's going to mean. So what we're going to do is, I'm just going to click cancel. That's perfectly fine. Right click, adjust the date and time. I'll just keep this at Eastern time. And what we're going to do is, oh, by the way, once I finish this update, I want to show you guys, start this Windows Updates piece for this server. I want to show you guys a couple other things we're going to be managing. So, check for updates. Just give it a few moments to download and install those updates. In the meantime, while that's going on, I want to show you guys something which we're going to be setting up here. The goal of today is get to where we can set this thing up right here. And this is called the Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, also known as SCCM. Okay, so I'm going to uninstall it. I'm going to uninstall this, and I'm going to show you guys how to get that installed on your machine. Now, you can. I haven't tried it yet, but I wanted to do a trial run one of these nights just to see if SCCM works in Server Core, because a lot of the Microsoft documentation is just kind of all over the place, if you know what I mean. And so I wasn't positively sure if you could run the main site in Core. Not sure yet, but I had to give this server the server itself. I've given it 16 gigs of RAM with 8 cores. I'm just going based on their documentation and their system requirements. So, just takes a little bit of time to uninstall. I'm going to close out of this for now, because we will not need that. I'm just going to bring this full screen, and we are going to take it easy with this server today. So I'm just going to stick to sconfig for this. And yes, having a WSUS server is a big prerequisite for SCCM. It's not so much a requirement, more as a recommended. So I'm just going to go ahead and set up this server. Let's see. This should take care of that. Now this is going to be just get. Sometimes this happens from time to time when I'm going from machine to machine. You'll see this start to happen. But this is still updating. So while that's updating, I'm going to just bring up the WSUS server back. And then let's see if we can bring up our WSUS server right here. So just give this a second. Now we fall back into it. Alright. Let's see, sconfig. And we'll just let this run some updates for right now. In the meantime, I always like to make sure everything's patched and up to date and everything before we get started. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and, if you haven't grabbed this file already, you might want to grab it. It's called it's not SQL Server. It's actually I'm just going to my users, go to the profile. In this little splash screen, I created this folder. This folder I extracted. This is a folder I extracted, and this will come up, which is the Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. But on my machine, I'm just installing the console. Okay, and it's basically it's similar to management tools. It's similar to RStat, but for SCCM. And it will give us this section that says specify this is the site server name. We haven't set this part up yet, and that will not be until the main server is set up. So we'll keep that aside for right now, but it's going to come in handy later. Let's see, let's go back to now this server is going to also be, by the way, this SCCM server that we're building, it's also going to have WDS, and it's going to have what we call ES, and also MDT as well. So this will be just for images and applications, so to speak. And then I'm also running, technically, I do not have to do it this way if I don't need to, but we certainly will make this a little bit easier. Let's just give it a few seconds. While that's updating, I wanted to talk a little bit about, and we'll be checking on this periodically, but I wanted to show you guys some Azure stuff, which basically has to do with, which we'll be setting up later, but Quarter.Azure, you'll see this right here. I am going to go ahead and set up a tenant in the meantime. It's called to welcome to Azure. Remember I said we were going to talk a bit about Azure throughout this course from time to time. This is where, and there's a boatload of different things you can do in Azure. I like it a lot. So this has to do with the only resource I care about for right now is actually two resources for right now. One is Azure Active Directory, and what you'll see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a tenant. So what's going to happen is this will be Azure Active Directory. But we'll be setting this up once you synchronize your Active Directory. We'll say Azure AD. Click on configuration. And we'll call this organization Corp. The initial is going to be Corp 1 on Microsoft.com. Which you see right there. And hit next. It's because there's a period here. It doesn't like a period. Already in use by another directory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch directories for just a second, because it looks like I may have already been in it. And there it is. This is my tenant right here that I just created. But that is how you would create one. And over here, I'm going to go over to Azure Active Directory. And I am just going to go ahead and go up to users. Now you can create a new, you would create a new user, so to speak. This is how you would create a new user in Azure AD. So you would go up to active users, and then over here just click on new users. And then I just type in, like, let's say I wanted to type in a username like, let's say, we'll just say Leonard Nimoy, you know, a good Star Trek reference. And then I'll just say Leonard Nimoy. It's the full name. First, it gets filled out first name. Of course, if this was a production environment, you definitely want to automate this process as much as possible. And then it'll say, let me create, I'll just see, you get two options here. You get either auto generate the password or let me create the password. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and create the password. You can, because this is just a testing thing. But in a production environment, typically you would auto generate the password. It would then be emailed to the user, and then they would then supply that password, and then you can even make it to where it'll make it so that they'll change their password. So I'm just going to type in a special password, and then you have these options here where it says groups and roles, and this is where you can go to groups here, and you can say select groups. It's not going to pull up any groups because I haven't made any groups yet, but I can show you how to create a group later. Roles, you can say just a user. If you click on that, you'll get this little section over here where you then get to see all of the different permissions and things like that. One issue, and I do not, it's also almost like a review video in itself, that I do not like about Azure, and I'll show you what I mean when I show you what AWS is. What I do not like about Azure is they only give you a very limited supply of roles. Now, not only that, but you also, now you can create a custom role, just like you can a custom group, but notice what it says over here. It says to assign custom roles to a user, your organization needs Azure Active Directory Premium P1 or P2. So if you're on a low-level licensing structure, and by the way, these licenses for Azure AD Premium are very expensive. Just a heads up. But you can certainly do that if you have the money in your budget to certainly push that license. You certainly can. In this case, this guy will just be, let's say you were setting him up just to manage, the only thing he manages is just Active Directory, things like that. And he can do password resets. Let's say he's just help desk. Cool. We'll just checkbox, let the checkbox next to the help desk, click on select, and then you can say usage location, set it to United States, and then over here, this is where you can set up the job title. So let's say he's help desk, IT, and you can set Lawrence Corp, and then manager. This is where you would have to select add another user here, and you can specify him as the manager. Very similar to on-prem Active Directory in that regard. So we'll just say click create, and now that user has been created. Okay, so that's how you create it in Azure Active Directory. Alright, now I'm going to go over to my machine and let me just show you how it's done on premises. How you would do this. You will go over here. This box will come up right here. And by the way, I'm doing this from a Windows 10 machine, but if this was your, it will look the same way, honestly, if you were doing this from your, what we call, you're on your domain controller and you were using a graphical user interface. So let's say I want to create a new user. I just hit new, click on user, and we'll just say the name. We'll say Tommy Davis, and I'll say for a username you can specify whatever you need it to. I just usually use first initial last name, and then click next, and then I usually just type in whatever password I need to. You can, if you have this box checked off, that means the user must change the password in the next logon. But on-prem, what I do not have to worry about is being on at a P1 and a P2 level licensing structure. Only on in the Azure space do I have to worry about that. So we'll say user cannot, let's say user cannot change the password. And we'll say also passwords in Azure Active Directory do expire at a certain point. But here you can specify whether the password expires or not. So we'll say, in this case, the user just change password, click next, and then click finish, and then the user right there is here. And then if you want to, let's say you want to add them to a group, you just right click, hit add to a group. You can give them admin rights, or you can go up to properties and then go up to member of, and you can specify which groups that he's in. Now, what I recommend is, like I said, if you're in an environment that's 10,000 customers, what I would highly recommend is do something like this, where, which I'll show you, what I recommend is, I'm not going to do it here, but basically what you should be doing is just use the PowerShell ICE, and then what you could do is over here, you would just write your script here, and you would test it, and then you would save it, and then you'd automate this entire process from an Excel spreadsheet. But you need an Excel spreadsheet to do it, where you can put all your users, all their account information, or you better yet, you could have the user, you could send the Excel sheet over to the user, have the user fill out the information there, and then you can just run the script once they've put in their information. Very, very simple, very easy script to write, and that's one way of automating the process. Now, you can create users from PowerShell. In fact, let's see if I can do new-add user, and then you can, if you want, you can do Sam account name. I'll just call it, let's say, this is basically just the username that you're setting up. So like Brad Pitt, or B Pitt in this case. We'll just say B Pitt or Brad Pitt. But first, you want to be able, if you're going to do this remotely, and I'm going to try it, I'm going to show you to see if this will work or not. But what you have to do is, do Sam account name, is B Pitt. This is the username right here. And then what you want to do is, and see there, unique principal name. See how that's not working? Or user principal name. So user principal name would be something like beat it at port1 on Microsoft.com. And then you could do password never expires. In this case, we'll say true. So his password will never expire, and which you wouldn't do in a production environment, but you do get that option. And you can even set up an account password. And again, you're still spelling things out. What I do not like about this, but you could do like convert to secure string. Do all this stuff here. Plain text dash force, and I'm not going to add too much of anything, but let's see if it works. And then you'll see there, it's going to ask for you to add a name to it, and of course it's going to give you that little red message because I didn't specify a name, but you can certainly do give a name. You can do this just like this. Give a name is Brad, surname is Pitt, and then you can do display name. Hang on. Display name, which would be called quotations Brad Pitt, and you get to say this Brad Pitt, and then what happens now is that you've just like that, I've just created that person's account. Now, I haven't added everything to it, but that's just one way, it's another way of creating an account. I did all this from Windows 10 box. I did not need to go to the domain controller and create this. So now, you can do enable, to enable the account, all you have to do is literally just do this, enable dash AD account, identity, and there it is. So now his account is already enabled. If I want to disable his account, I just do disable dash AD account, identity, BPIT. Now, once we run the Azure Active Directory synchronization, what's going to happen is that whatever change I make here will be changed also in Azure. So we'll show you that a little bit later. Right now, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and check to see how our updates are doing on the SCCM machine. So we'll go ahead and restart. And let's check on our WSUS. Looks like that's already done. Restart both of those servers. But again, I like to show you guys different things and things like that. So, very, very crucial, very, very good stuff. Very, very solid. I like doing this. I do this almost all the time. Now, if you want, you could also set their account, their password right from here. Or you could do, if you need to make any changes, just do the set-AD user and to their account, just do identity BPIT. And if you want, and just say department, let's say they're in the IT department. So we'll just say IT, and there you go. Now that changes their whatever department they're in. Like I said before, if you've got automated script, just for what they basically need. What I highly recommend is run scripts. Either run a script, or you could or put them in a group. Put them in a group, because that way, once you, let's say they rotate a job to a new job within the company or something like that, you can then just take them out of a group. I'm gonna actually yes. Let me just get into let's go back up here. let's go back to our servers for a second. Alright, so on the Windows Server Update Services side, I'm going to go back into sconfig and see if there are any extra updates that we need. So we'll just go up to, just type in number 6, and then just tap A. Okay, and let's see if there's any extra updates or anything else that are lingering around, which I did expect to have happen. Right now, they're downloading those updates. Let's go over to our SCCM machine. Okay, and what we're going to do is, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and see if there's any extra updates lingering on this server. Okay, just a few moments. By the way, in case I haven't showed you yet, remember how I was talking earlier about the SQL Server? We'll go over to SQL Server Management Studio, which I have installed on my machine. It's just my regular machine here. I'm already logged in, and then you'll see this show up, and this is where all my databases and everything. And again, I'm managing this all. I'm managing all this remotely. I'm currently remoted in. Once I've enabled it on the firewall for the group policy, I can enable all of my remote access that I need. So, you've got databases, you've got system databases, you got things like master, and things like that. And these are all, this is basically where I manage all of the databases and everything. Which we'll also be using for our Windows Server Update Services server. So, we'll be getting into that a little bit later. But I just want to show you. Also, for Windows Server Update Services, I am managing it also through RSAT. So just go up to Windows Administration Tools, and then look for Windows Server Update Services, and I just left click, and I just click OK, and you'll see this box show up as well. We're not ready. Of course, the server is not configured yet because we're still in the process of getting it configured. So, this part is very important to have. Now, I'm going to go over here, back to our SCCM, and while we're getting started, we're going to go ahead. Not only this is also going to be where all of our it's going to be running WDS and MDT. These are going to be the main two that are running. All right. Let's go over to, if I can go over to network settings. So just go to network and sharing center, and then go up to change adapter settings, and then go up to properties, disable IP version 6. Sometimes it does cause some issues. IPv6 does cause some issues when joining to the domain. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to then just go ahead and we'll type in our next IP, which will be on the .7. Then we'll just make this the default gateway, 0.0.0.2, which is our domain controller. Okay, click close, and then now we are ready to join this machine to the domain. So let's go through, go up to where is it? Oh, there it is. PowerShell, run as admin, and then I just do add-computer, domain name. We said this was on Microsoft.com, and Let's go over here to just type the credential. Also, yes, another thing I did yesterday, I did create myself an account. I own a regular account, so now I will not have to worry about typing an administrator for everything now. So once I did that, just do restart. And just type in the password. Let's give it a few moments while we're getting this one on the domain. And what I'm going to do is, let me just do something real fast. I'm going to just take out that CM01. I just removed it from here, so now we're going to go ahead and rename this machine. Okay? So now that machine is joined to the domain. I wanted to show you guys something a little more complex. We join a machine to the domain. I usually have OUs. I have not set up any OUs yet, which we will be getting into those today. So at some point. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and rename the computer rather than going through system and having to keep clicking and clicking and clicking. I just go right up to PowerShell. I can literally just type in rename. Make this a little bit bigger. Make this a little bit bigger. Just maximize the screen. Name dash computer. New name. CM01. That way I know which one is which. So CM, that means it's the configuration manager server. And then just do restart that computer. Just like that, it then restarts everything. Okay, let's go ahead and type in that information. Alright, let's click X on that box, and we'll go ahead. The first thing I'm going to do to get this thing ready is I'm going to go ahead and install, I'm going to do this part from PowerShell. We'll go ahead and install the, what we call the file server. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to push a few installations and things like that from my machine over to this configuration manager machine. So let's do install dash Windows feature. So do a name is fs dash file server. Include management tools is all we need. So I can then manage this machine. And it will go ahead and install that role. Of course, you could have done it through the server manager as well if you're used to the graphical user interface. But that's one thing. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and push a few, go back to my machine, and I'm just going to go ahead and push some of this stuff over to our other machine. So we're going to go ahead first. I'm going to push this over to that machine, and there's a bunch of different prerequisites you need to get this thing to run. I did run into this last night, so we'll go over here to right in here, and then we'll just create a new folder called SCCM. And what I'm doing is I'm copying all this over from my machine over to this machine. So you could certainly do it this way. I did say I was going to show you guys how to set up a file server today. It's very, very similar. Basically, this is how you set up a file server. It's literally just going through, and which I'll show you guys in a second, but it's basically very, very similar to how you set up another server. Again, I usually set this all up through Core. And then I'll show you two types. There's the DFS type, which is basically where you type in the domain, which is the namespace, and then the name of the folder. Or the regular type, which basically means you type in the name of the server and then the name of the folder, which I don't really like because you have to kind of memorize the name of the server. And if you have a lot, and for user specific things, a lot of folks just do not know, are not outside of IT, are not going to know what a server is. Really. So it's best to just use the domain namespace. It just makes it much easier, so to speak. But I'll show you guys that eventually. So we'll set that up. Well, we're copying this over, but that's literally all you have to do is for the regular. This is just for a regular file server. This is all you have to literally do. Just install the file server, and then, like I said, just but not for the domain namespaces. That's something a little different. It's a couple of other different things you have to do. But I just copy this over, and then I wanted to copy over. What else did I want to copy over? There was this right here. These two right here. ADK, which is the Assessment Deployment Toolkit, and the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. And I'm just going to just copy those and then send them over to our SCCM server. Okay, because you need these. These are going to be your prerequisites. Okay, 100%. Let's see, go up to over here. And then I just paste them over here. Okay, so now to get this thing started and situated, you should see them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the lazy way out. Well, kind of take the lazy way out, and I'm just going to go. That doesn't exist. Okay, so AP, I need to CDC users, and then, which I believe, SCCM. And that will take you over to the SCCM folder. Do it LS. There you go. Those are the folders that the folders that I just copied over. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and run ADK setup.exe, and then this will come up. Tells you, I just take it from me, I guess. But just click on this, install the Windows Access and Deployment Kit, Windows 10 on this machine, and it'll say if you this privacy thing, which I usually select no for, and then click next, and then click accepts, and then I literally just install this tool, and you can also this as well, whatever one you need. I don't really need this one because I can install it from another server if I need to. Click install, and this typically takes about 10 to 15 minutes usually to install on a solid state drive. Let's go back to our WSUS server, and what we have here, I'm going to go ahead and just type in 8. Actually, yeah, type in 8, and then we'll change this to S 10.0.0.8. So it'll be your network information. That's all situated, ready to go. And this is for any server. The only big thing that you have to worry about is right up is there certain PowerShell commands, especially with WSUS or Windows Server Update services, that just do not work in PowerShell. Microsoft has tried to brand PowerShell as this backwards compatible thing, and it's not. I would say it's 90% backwards compatible, but it's not all the way backwards compatible, so to speak. So just keep that in mind. Let's go back up to command line, and then what I'm going to do is go through and let's disable. Let's see. Let's go to PowerShell. I'm going to show you guys something. If we can make this a little bit bigger. Alright. Now, what we're going to do, see, what I did here is I just typed in PowerShell. I'm still in PowerShell, even though I'm technically still in command prompt. So what I'm going to go ahead and do next is we're just going to disable IPv6. And I usually just disable IPv6 until after I join machines or domain, but you certainly do not need to. I think it's because one of the issues I'm running into, the reason why I disable it is because in my environment, I'm still using a internet service provider router, and those routers are very, very limited. But eventually I am going to, at some point, replace that router with my own wireless access point and my own special router that does what I need to do or what I want to do without any issues. So that's something, but that's a sidebar conversation. Let's go ahead and disable IPv6. Okay? And what I'm going to go ahead and do, because we want this to, if I want to be able to remote into it, I have to do this. So just tap 9 real fast. Click on Eastern Standard Time. And just to under 10. We'll say I've set this to basic. Bring this back to command line. And then we want, the last thing we need to do is we need to join this to the domain. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright. Now I'm going to start creating some OUs. We'll get into that in just that's going to get a little bit complex. And these OUs are organizational units. So when we, let's say, I send GPOs and things like that, which we'll get into a little bit later, that's where the OUs come in handy. And if I go to the domain name, just type in that domain name. Those parentheses, dash restart. Now, if you have any OUs, if I had any OUs, I would just do OU path, and then I would just do like or common name or OU equals the name of the OU. And then I would do DC equals whatever your, how can I put this? DC equals whatever the name of your domain controller is. Like Orange Corp 1, and then DC equals 1 Microsoft, and then DC equals com. Well, when we get into containers and things like that with Active Directory, I'll show you guys what I mean by that. So for now, we're just going to keep this very simple. Hit restart. Type in our password for our account. And that is it. Now we've restarted our machine. Alright. Just give this a few moments while we solve this. And there we go. The machine is now joined to the domain. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just go through right back over here And the first thing I want to do to get this started is I'm going to show you how you run this initialization from the graphical user interface today, and on another day I will show you how to run your Windows Server Update Services in a separate video on how you do it on a core server. So, but I'm just going to do the initial today from here. So, let's type in PowerShell, then type in install dash Windows feature, name is WSUS, and we'll just say include management tools. Alright, and I can install it right from here. Alright, so I think so the error says the role is not valid. So then I just do this, get dash Windows feature, and see if I can do this as a wildcard. WSUS, which is not. W. I just do W, and then I can see. That's how I narrow it down. If you want to do it by wildcard, you certainly can. I do this almost all the time. So what I'm looking for is Windows Server Update Services. And if I can find it, or just see if I can do now Windows. So let's do it. Update. And there it is. So sometimes I just do a wildcard like a U or something. And sure enough, there it is, Windows Server Update Services. So, what I'm going to go ahead and do is, I'm going to go ahead and run this Windows feature. I could have just run the up arrow, but what the heck. And just do name, Update Services. Update services dash services and update services dash DB, because we're going to be partnering it with from the SQL servers where we're going to store the databases. We're not going to use WID stands for Windows Windows Internal Database is what it stands for. And so, so just keep that in mind. But it's basically where it's very, very limited. A lot of limitations. If you want extra functionality, you do have to have a SQL server. So yes, what the features of that? Okay, there's a conflict. See, so I mean, sometimes it can be very funny acting on what it wants. So sometimes I have to then take that out. Let's see now if it'll install. Because if you try to install everything, it will cause some issues. give it a few moments. Okay, so it looks like that is now installed, and now what we're going to do I'm going to go ahead, I tell you what, let me check on the other server, see how that's going along. And I always check this from time to time, and this is just from this is the Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit. You'll see this quite a bit. Go over to, let's go back over, let's run that MSI file that's right here. So I can just do this. Just tab over, just click next, follow these little prompts here, and just go ahead and install. Doesn't take very long. It's a very small little file. And then I want to go ahead and install WDS. Yes, but it may not work. May get our little red error message. If so, I know how to fix this. Nope, it actually did work. That's it. That is impressive. And that basically, to verify, I just do a get dash Windows feature. This. We haven't installed the tools yet, so I'm going to go ahead and install that. Admin pack. Okay, so this is all the administration tools for WDS. And there's another one we have to install. So let's do get dash Windows feature with a wildcard of remote. And you'll see remote access management tools. We don't really want that, at least not right now anyway. Let's see. What if I take it to RE and what do we get? Let's see. Nope. Alright, let's take it down to R. Sometimes I have to kind of narrow it down from time to time. But, there it is. This is what I was looking for. This is another prerequisite that you need to have installed. So we'll go ahead and install that RDC. Let's see. Name is RDC, include management tools. Which install, I'm just installing all of our prerequisites. Alright. Alright, so now that we have that installed, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys. Now we should be able to get into that. Well, actually, nope, never mind. So I meant to do this. Do a CD and get inside of that folder, and then splash.html. And then this will show up here. it will give you, it'll say download required prerequisite files, which is fine. I'm going to go ahead and download those. Click on browse, and I'm going to just go ahead and put it into, all of it into the same little folder, and we'll call this, go into our SCCM, and then just put it in, download, did not exist, okay, so then you have, then I have to kind of go ahead and create it, which is what we're going to do now. Folder, call it downloads, download it, click OK and hit download. While that's going on, we're going to go back to our Windows Server Update Services server, and let's get out of PowerShell. And then there's another, I'm going to do cd backslash, set quotation marks, program files, update services, slash tools, and there we have it. Let's do a dir. Let's do util.exe. Post install. And there's a couple other things we need to do to that. So there's this, but there's also I know there's this part here, which is content. Whoops. So sorry about that. So actually, it is an equal sign. Semicolon to Zeus, and there's another part to this. I feel like there's something else that's missing here. For the SQL side, this might fail, but let's see. Name on the command line. So what you have to do, because we're doing it from SQL, this is going to fail. But rather than going through that, I'm going to show you guys how to do this from the graphical user interface. We're going to show you how to do this from core. Like I said earlier, I'm going to show you how to do this from later. If we were doing Windows internal database, this would work. But because we're doing it from SQL Server, it's a little bit different. Now, it's still the same command, but let's go. But there's one other extra piece you have to add to it. But we'll save that for another day. Let's go over to Server Manager. If we can find that. From the Windows 10 box, that is. And let's go over to all servers. And I'm just going to go ahead and remove this server first. And then I'm just going to go here, add servers. And we'll do, look for, I'm going to add my list server to this list here. Let's just do this. Just give it a moment. And then we'll go ahead and Launch post installation tasks right here. Just give it a moment. And once you get this installed, so where if I can find the little box that allows I didn't want that. And we're having an issue. Alright, so, meanwhile, back on the, hang on a second, let's go back over here to the CM server, and we'll click on install, and it'll say setup requires 3.5. So that is another prerequisite. You have to have net 3.5. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just do install this Windows feature. Or just actually get net. And you'll see 3.5 is not installed. So what we'll do is I'll go ahead and install that. Install bash Windows feature dash name net framework dash features. Let's install that. And by the way, I think we figured out what the issue was with WSUS, by the way. We'll go back into that server in just a second. So, once we get this installed. Taking a little bit of time. Meanwhile, let's go back to the WSUS server. Okay, so let's go back in. I want to show you guys something. So let's go back and log back into the WSUS server. Okay. So remember this piece, you have to add this SQL. If you're doing it from a SQL server, you have to do this from here. SQL instance name equals MSS, because this is my SQL server information. It should work. And if not, then I'll have to check services and see what the port number is, because I think I forgot what it was when I set this up yesterday. Let's just take a little bit of a moment. no such host is known. So I think it's, and that is because I did not specify the port number for it, which is what I'm trying to locate and find. So you do need the port number, and once we have that, it will then run. So just keep that in mind if you're going to run this from SQL. You do have to have the port number for it. We can do this, and by the way, this is how you can find the configuration manager, if I can locate it. This is perfectly fine. So you would go, let's see, can we go over to properties, and then enter instance. So sometimes you have to go through and find out this information. I had to, sometimes it's very, very challenging once you have that and you cannot locate it. Meantime, let's just minimize that for a second. Go back over here. Looks like that framework is installed, and then we can go ahead and run this installation. And meanwhile, I'll say this wizard walks you through the steps necessary to install or upgrade Configuration Manager. We'll click Next, and then what we're going to do, it'll say install a configuration primary website, primary site. I'm going to keep this as primary. You only need to use Essential Administration Site if you're going to have multiple primary sites. In this case, we're not, so we'll hit Next, and then click on this section that says Install Evaluation Edition of this product. Click Next, and then click these. I accept these terms and conditions. And then look for where you used previously downloaded files, which we downloaded in, which will be under downloaded, which is what we need. Let's give that a second. And we'll select our language, click English, select the language again, and I will say 100, and then we'll just say I'm going to uncheck this box where it says install the configuration manager console because I'm going to be managing it from my Windows 10 machine. So we'll uncheck that box and hit next. And then we'll say install the primary site as a standalone site. Click next. You want to continue, hit next. And then what we're going to do is M100, this is our database. And then this will be the SQL Server name, so we'll change this. I'm going to change this portion to point to the SQL Server that we have. So we'll go ahead and click next. Just give this a few moments. It's not correctly. Alright, let's see. What we do wrong? Let's see. Because I didn't have an S here. Add that and hit next. And it'll say path to the SQL data file. We'll leave these as defaults and hit next. And then for SQL Server clustering. I'm going to keep this portion. I'm going to leave this on our configuration manager machine. Hit next. And then PKI certificate for client authentication. So this is where we'll be setting up some certificates and things like that. Say configure with each site system role, and this will say clients will use HTTPS when they have a valid PKI. We'll hit next, and then we'll set up. It'll ask for us to set up a management point, and then what you'll say, this is your management. This is where the clients with policy and content location information. It also receives configuration data from clients. So we'll select HTTPS. So what we're going to do is we're going to be setting up the certificate authority server later, and so I'm going to keep this at HTTPS and then hit next, and it'll say HTTPS communication will require a valid PKI certificate for the roles and the clients. And this is a production environment. I'll show you guys later, because we have to set up for this port. If you want to set up HTTPS, you have to have a certificate authority server, and we have not set that up yet, which we'll set up in a separate course. For right now, I'm just going to change this to HTTP. Hit next, and it'll say collect usage. Hit next, and it'll say select the service that uses the SCP point. Click next, and then click next again. And then make sure it passes our prerequisites. Meanwhile, I'm going to go back over to the WSUS installed. So actually what we probably should have done, the administration console. So it'll say SQL status site server computer has administrative rights on the SQL server. It looks like we're failing a few prerequisites already, and I'm gonna let that run in the meantime. Head over to. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple extra prerequisites. One is I have to go over to ADSI edit, and then this will come up right here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is right now we're just going to go ahead and delete this container. So over here, I had to go through and run a new object over here, make a container, and I just call this system management, and then hit next, and then hit finish, and then this is going to be our little container. Right click and hit properties, go to security tab, go to add object types, computers, type in the name of that machine, so we'll say SSRV, and then it's literally going to have full control, and then over this container, and then I'm going to go over here to double click on here, just change it to this object and all dissident objects, click apply, click OK, and then click OK again. So now you have this is associated with said container. Okay, so that's one other thing you have to do to get that to run. Not only that, now I'm going to rerun our check and see what happens. So looks like you have site server computer account administrative rights, and say this requires that the computer has admin rights on the SQL Server and management point computers. Okay, so basically what this means is you basically just have to go through over here, and let me show you guys what this basically means. You have to go over to Active Directory users and computers, go over here, type in, see this service account that I created? I then have to map that account, make sure that user cannot change password ever expires. And then over here on the SQL Server side, we go over to services from the Windows 10 box. And look for SQL Server, and then right here you'll see this. Click apply, click OK, and I'm going to stop the service. So we'll go ahead and close out of this for a second. I'm going to go ahead and stop the service and then restart the service. Alright, so make sure that happens. And then also, not only that, but we're also going to, if we can do this or not, go over to the SQL Server. If I can find it. Type in run MMC. Click yes. Then over here, add and remove snapping. Look for computer management. Another machine. Just make sure that the account in fact has what we need under the admins group. Okay, so just make sure that that service account has admin rights. That admin rights to that machine. And close out of this, and then rerun the check again. Alright, so let's go back to that MMC that we had. We're going to try something a little bit different. What if I could run MMC? We'll bring this back over here. And go to add and remove snapping. And look for, go back to computer management. And then on that SQL Server, click OK, and then go over and then we'll drop this down, go to System Tools, Local Users and Groups, go to Groups, Admin, and then we're going to add that server to this list. Because it wasn't added to the list, that's why it's giving that error message. So go to SQL. Not SQL. No, we want the CM server on this list. Whoops. Go to Object Types, Computers, click OK, and hit Apply. Over here. So now let's rerun that check again. And while we're doing that, we bring up the Alright, so I think we got everything we need. It'll say configuration requires WSUS. And what we'll do is I'm just going to, before we do that, I'm going to go back. Let's finish up our WSUS server. So let me go back over to that server and see if it's 1433 like I think it is. Sorry, guys, we're having a little, so I'm having a little issue here, but I think we may be able to resolve it. If we can find it. Let's give it a second once more. Alright, so I think we've got figured out our problem, I think. We may have. We go over to, back up to, let's create an MMC. Go up to add remove snap-in. Look for sometimes this will happen to and unfortunately it does not give me that as an option. I was looking for the SQL Server option, but let's just go through and close out of this, go back into here, and now I'm going to say begin install. We'll let this install while which is going to take a little while because it has to configure so many different things. So and as you can see, we are now installing Endpoint Configuration Manager. So give this like a few minutes. It's going to continue to install. There's just a lot of, the only thing about setting this up is a lot of prerequisites you have to do to get this to work. But I was able to get it to work. This is how I was able to get it to work last night. But it's going to get a bit interesting. Once it's installed, and I'm going to show you how we can install the Configuration Manager console that I was trying to show earlier, but couldn't because this wasn't set up yet. If you guys like what is being shown, feel free to click that like button and subscribe to the channel. I would totally appreciate that. So we only have about, let's see, a few minutes left in this course for today. What I'm going to do is on this coming Saturday, which will be actually the 23rd at 5 p.m., I will show you we'll go over a bit more about SCCM, as well as we'll finish up setting up that Windows Server Update Services server. And because we wanted to tie it to SQL Server, but there's a couple things that Switcher's having a little issue that I'm trying to resolve. And this is going to take a little while, as you can see. Well, we're going to let that go ahead and do its thing and go from there. Right now, it's trying to set up the SQL database, so to speak. So we'll see you guys on Saturday the 23rd at 5. Have a good evening, and we'll see you guys on Saturday. This should be getting it's going to get a little more interesting.